Today I'm circling back to last week's topic because I want to clarify a few things and I want to expand upon a few things. Last week I shared why a center grain line is helpful in pants fitting. And the first thing I want to say about that is I made a little bit of a boo-boo. After I uploaded the video, I realized that I probably should have called the center grain line the center balance line. A grain line is printed on a pattern to tell you how to position the pieces on the fabric so it agrees with the grain of the fabric, whereas a balance line shows you the proportions of a pattern, and specifically the vertical center balance line will show you where the center of the pattern is from the hem edge to the waistline. And I think some people might have gotten confused about that because it is possible to have a grain line that is not in the center of your pattern. So in that case, you would actually have to create the center balance line to see that relationship. What I want to do first is show you a really good example of a pants pattern that has a grain line printed on it that is not in the center of the pattern pieces. In front of me here, you can see this little layout. This is a Georgian ginger pattern. I put a link to this pattern in the description below if you want to check out the pattern. It's actually a very cute grunge style pattern. And the reason why I'm telling you it's a grunge style pattern is because they made it out of plaid fabric and they wanted the plaid to match from waist to crotch level. In order to do that, they had to swing the grain line around to make it straight up at the top. But then notice the leg is sliding off towards the side seam a little bit here. So this is a really good example of when a grain line is not a center balance line. And if I expand it or extend it, you can see, I'm just going to draw it straight down. That's the grain line that you're going to line up with the selvage edge or the folded edge of your fabric, and that's right here. Okay, so you can see this pattern piece is laid like this on the fabric, but you can see that this grain line is not giving us any useful information about the center of the pattern. So if I wanted to figure that out, I could, and I'll use a different color, I could find the middle of the leg at the hem, which is right here, and then I'm going to go up to the approximate knee position, and I'm going to measure that, and I'm going to make another dot there, and then I'm going to connect these straight up. So this is how you would find a center balance line. So you can see that that looks very different. You can see that this pattern, even though it looks a little wonky, it still is a pretty balanced pattern. However, because we're not lining up the center balance line with the selvage edge, the drape of the leg is going to be different. And in fact, if you go and check out the pattern and all of the pattern tester photos on Georgian Ginger's website, you can see that the leg is rumpled. And it was intended to be rumpled because it's a grunge style pattern. And I thought that that was a very cool design. My attention was called to it because someone in my J Stern Designs Fit Sew Embroider Facebook group asked me for fitting advice because they wanted it to hang smoothly on their leg. They didn't want it to be rumpled. If you want to check out my members' pants fitting journey working with this pattern, you can join my J Stern Designs Fit Sew Embroider Facebook group. There's a link below for that as well. And you can see this whole process. She ended up changing the grain line to get the pants to hang more smoothly on her body. So that was her choice, but also check out George and Ginger so you can see how it was intended to fit. I just wanted to clarify that so everyone understands that if you look at a pattern in your stash and it's got a short little grain line like this, here's the front leg, okay, that's where the designer wants you to line that up with the salvage edge of your fabric to agree with the grain on the fabric. Now getting back to my example here, you can see I brought my new fitting friend over, and you can see she's got a full pair of pants on. I'm really excited about the results. I used the back pattern pieces that I shared with you last week to show the difference between how a leg hangs with the center balance line centered on the leg versus a center balance line where it's very close to the center back edge, making it not balanced from waist to crotch. And I used those pieces, and then I cut out 2 front pattern pieces so I could make the full pant. What I want to show you here is another thing I was super excited about was I was able to use the dress form pads that I purchased for a Cool Tools to demonstrate the fit if I had a prominent behind versus a average behind. And I'm just going to turn it to the side here so you can see. This is the average shape of the dress form as it is. And then if I turn it to this side, you can see I created a prominent behind by padding up the right side of the back leg. So this gave me the opportunity to see how this pant fit with 2 different shapes basically. Before I show you the full leg and how this muslin is fitting with the 2 different grain lines, I just want to remind you what the pattern pieces look like left to right leg. Here is the left leg, and you can see the grain line comes straight up and hits the pattern here versus this one where the grain line comes up and then hits the pattern very close to the center back edge right here. And if I put them together, I just want to show you the difference here. I'm lining up the inseams, okay, so I'm lining up the hems and the inseams, and you can see at the top I dashed in where the center back seam is on this top piece, and then over here I dashed in the side seam of the straighter center balance line so you can see the difference. Okay, so that's the extra here is what I took off over here. So they're essentially the same leg. It's just this one has a more angled center back seam. And you can tell by the way they look, if I flip it like this, you can see they're virtually the same height because they hit at the waist almost identically here. But you can see if I just dash this in on this side, oops. Okay, that's how much fabric was removed at the center back to create a grain line that is tilted towards the center back. So that's what my pattern pieces look like. And again, I took this size 6 pant leg and I sewed it together. This is what the pattern pieces look like. Now let me show you the full leg. You can see I made a full pair of pants, and what I want to show you is in the back you can see that both of these legs are hanging pretty nicely now. What I specifically wanted to show you is here on the left leg you can see that the fabric is hanging nicely on the leg. The center grain line comes right up and hits here at the waist. so it's relatively centered on the body, whereas on the right leg, the grain line comes up and touches the center back seam here. And what I want you to notice is, because I filled the right side with pads to make a prominent behind, you can see it's now taking up the room created by that angled center back seam, and the back leg is hanging much better. It is a little bit wonky because these legs are sewn together and they're different, and also there's one, one of my butt cheeks is bigger than the other, but basically I think you can see that the grain line hangs nicely because the body is taking up this space. Now if I take the pads out, so I just want to show you, I put 2 butt pads in here. Okay, so I put these in there. Oops. Okay, I put these in there. If I take those out and let it hang again, you can see what happens is I have all of this rumpled fabric not fitting correctly. I wanted to give you this 3D example of why the center balance line that tips over to the center back seam does make room for a prominent behind, and how it's going to look if you don't have a prominent behind. I hope that clears up the difference between a grain line versus a center balance line, and I hope that showing you different shapes on my new fitting buddy over here helps you understand how a center balance line that is tilted towards center back creates more room. Now, it's not that the center back grain line is tilted, it's the pattern adjustments or the shape of the pattern creates more room or negative space inside your pants by angling the center back seam back. Now that I showed you the full length view of the pants and how they fit, let's go back and look at the back leg one more time. I dashed in the shape of the back center back seam on the right leg that has a more angled center back seam. That angle creates more room for a behind here. So you can see, remember, if we think about this as a chair, and you're going to sit down in the chair, this is more of a lounge chair, giving you more room to sit. It also brings the center back edge closer to the center balance line. So it isn't the center balance line that tilted towards the center back seam. It's the shape of the center back seam that makes it closer to make it work for a shape that needs more negative space or more room inside your pants to sit. I don't want anyone to be confused. You're not tilting the center balance line towards the center back. It's the adjustments or the shape of the pattern that create that situation. If you're working with a pattern that has a vertical center balance line that is centered on the back leg and you have a curvy prominent behind, angling it is going to give you more room inside, and it's going to bring the grain line closer to the center back. So I just wanted everyone to just think about that for a second. You're not tilting the center balance line. It's the pattern shape that creates a situation where it may be closer up at the top at the waistline. The biggest issue is if you have a pattern that's shaped like this and you have a very straight figure, you saw what happens. You'll have a lot of extra fabric on the outside hanging out, and you're not going to really be able to get rid of that, because what you would need to do is straighten the center back edge and then pull it off of the side seam. That's why it's important to understand where the center balance line is and is it in agreement with your shape. If anybody has any questions or comments about that, please post those below and I will help you. I hope you enjoyed this Fit Tip Tuesday. If you did, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. It helps me grow. Thank you all for watching and have a wonderful rest of your day.